Hi, this is Jennifer with Make My Heart Smile, and today I'd love for you to crochet along with me. This is a series of crochet lessons where you will learn beginner basic to easy to intermediate level crochet skills. Check out my other tutorials in this series to see more. Written instructions will always be in the description below. Today's lesson is focusing on the absolute basics to get you started. So, first of all, in today's lesson, you will only need yarn and a crochet hook. But there are a lot of different types of yarns, and there are a lot of different types of crochet hooks. So I'm going to talk about your materials first, because obviously, if you're sitting down with me to crochet, you're going to need some tools. This is my crochet case. It's a simple roll case that I did crochet myself. Check out my other video to see more about that. But for any crochet project, you need your hooks, scissors, and usually a darning needle. Now for today's lesson, we won't be needing a darning needle, so we'll talk about that in subsequent lessons. Stitch markers are also a great idea. So if you're looking to learn crochet and make wonderful crocheted things, then you might think about getting these things. This is my favorite type of stitch marker. It simply slips into the stitch and there's no need to clasp it, which I think takes up too much time. So those are my favorite kind of stitch markers. And then a measuring tape of some kind is a good idea. And then I also have different things in my little pocket, like pen or a pencil, and even some little post-it notes for keeping track of pattern notes or keeping track of my stitches, my stitch count. And so if you're learning the basics of crochet, I would recommend these size crochet hooks to get started. Now, my set of hooks is Boye brand, B-O-Y-E. And I purchased it at Walmart fairly inexpensively. There are also Susan Bates hooks, which are another popular brand. So let's talk about the two different kinds of crochet hooks. They can come in different materials: plastic, metal, which are like mine, wooden like this one, and those are basically the materials. When I first started crochet, I had plastic crochet hooks, and then I had a set of metal crochet hooks that did not have this rubbery grippy handle, and I really love the grippy handle, so I went to this set. But I learned on tapered crochet hooks that were just made out of metal. Boye brand has tapered crochet hook tips. So this is a wooden Susan Bates hook, which is inline. So as you can see, if I can zoom that in, the barrel of the crochet hook is all one size. So there is no tapering. And this is a size 6mm. This is a tapered crochet hook. So as you can see, it tapers at the barrel. So these are two different kinds. Your stitches won't be too different. This is a 5mm, so as you can see, there's different sizes. It's really up to you. It's your preference. Whatever you find in the store, whatever you find you work with best. This is quite a long one. I don't prefer the long ones. For beginners, I would recommend a set where you have sizes 5, 6, up to 8. So my Boye set here, B-O-Y-E, is Also a set that has half sizes. So on a crochet hook, you will see letters and numbers. The most reliable are the millimeters. So they are measured in millimeters. So the size or the width of the barrel of the crochet hook is in millimeters. And as you can see, they go from super narrow and tiny to super thick and big. My set goes from a 2 up to a 10. But for beginners, I would recommend sizes 4, 5, 6, and possibly 8 if you're using a bulky yarn to start. Today, I'm going to be using my 6mm crochet hook. You will also see letters. So a 5mm hook is the letter H. Then I have a 5.25, which is an I. And then I have 5.75, which is J, but that is also size 6. J is usually size 6. And then I have K, this is my 8, and all the way up to L. I'm sorry, K is my 6.5, and then L is my 8mm. So, again, I would recommend staying in the sizes of 4, a 5, a 6, or an 8. Those are the most common sizes that you're going to see when purchasing crochet hooks. So I'm going to use my J, which is a 6, and I'm going to get this out of the way so that we can move on to talking about yarn. Now, for beginners, I also recommend certain types of yarn, a certain type of yarn to start. Now, when you go into Michael's or Hobby Lobby or any place that sells yarn, you're going to see a lot of different kinds of yarn, and it can be very overwhelming. So let's talk about that for a minute. When you buy a skein or ball of yarn, you're going to see a lot of information on the label. This number right here tells you your weight or thickness of yarn. And yarn brands vary in quality. So this is a very common size you will see, size 4 or number 4. This is an acrylic yarn. This is Big Twist from Michael's. It is 100% acrylic. This is an alpaca wool yarn, and it is a little bit thinner. This would be size 3. For beginners, I would recommend a thicker yarn. Now, acrylic has some stretch in it, whereas cotton does not have a lot of stretch. And it doesn't glide on your hook, especially a metal hook, as well as acrylic. Cotton is great for making a lot of different things, but for beginners, I wouldn't recommend it. It splits very easily, meaning the strands of the yarn come apart pretty easily, and that can snag on your hook. So that might be frustrating for a beginner. So I wouldn't recommend cotton yarn. I would recommend acrylic. Now, acrylic yarn is going to come in a lot of different colors, obviously. And you might want to choose your most favorite color. And if your favorite color is a dark color like purple or navy blue or even black, you're going to have a hard time seeing your stitch definition when you're learning. And that's not advisable because that will lead to frustration as well. So I wouldn't recommend a very dark yarn. As you can see, you can't see your stitches as well. So I would recommend a lighter color. You're going to see variegated yarn, which is yarn that changes color on the strand. That also might make it difficult to learn at first. So I would recommend a solid color. You're also going to see much thicker yarn. This is a bulky chenille yarn. It's super soft, super fuzzy. I do like the size of this. This is, I don't have the label here, but I'm pretty sure it's a 5, possibly even a 6. Okay, and again, you're going to see that number on your yarn label right here. Never mind the other numbers. On the label, you're also going to see what size hook it recommends for that size. So this size 4, which is very common in acrylic yarn, like Red Heart brand or this Big Twist brand at Michael's, is going to usually recommend a size 5 millimeter, as you can see. And then it also, I can get that focused, will also tell you that is an H. Apologize for the fuzzy. So 4 medium weight, 5 millimeter hook. This is super fun to start with learning. I would recommend a size 6 yarn or a size hook for this one, or even up to a size 8. And this would be a really great choice if you're first learning chaining and single crochet. Also, it doesn't split, the chenille yarn. I wouldn't get anything thicker than this. I wouldn't go super bulky, and in yarn stores, craft stores, you're going to see super chunky. I wouldn't go any thicker than a 5 or a 6. For today's tutorial, I am going to use my size 6, but I'm going to use what is called a, well, this is Woobles brand. I don't have the label, but this is Woobles, which is very popular right now. Bernat brand also makes a yarn like this. I believe it's called Bernat Home Decor, but it's a tube-like yarn, and so there's no splitting involved. This is the same size yarn in an acrylic alpaca wool blend, and as you can see, it has you know, strands, and it's about the same thickness as this. This is polyester and cotton, and this is more like, I don't know, a tube, I guess, because it's filled, but it creates a great stitch definition and is really easy to work with because it will not split. So this is the one I'm going to use for demonstration today. Any of these yarns, I'm not saying that you can't use any of these yarns. You can. I would just want you to be set up for success and less frustration. So let's get started. The first thing that you need to know to do in crochet to start any project that works back and forth in rows is a slip knot. Before I show you the slip knot, it's important that you are holding your hook correctly and you're in a comfortable position. So I would recommend sitting at a table. I'm sitting here at my craft table. If you're sitting on the couch, maybe prop your arms up with a pillow so that you have some kind of surface that's at eye level to work at. So be in a comfortable position, and form is important. Now, obviously, I am right-handed. And in crochet tutorials, you're going to see 2 different positions in holding the hook. You're going to see something like this, and then you're going to see something like this. This is the form that I was taught, and this is the form I use. I'm not going to say it's the correct form, but this is the form I'm going to use. And then holding the working yarn tail in my left hand. And when we're making a slip knot, we have the end of the yarn. There are a lot of different ways to make a slip knot. I'm going to show you the way I prefer, where you take it in your right hand, grab it with your other fingers, have the working yarn here, have your tail here. Grab the tail with your other fingers here in your left hand and kind of put your fingers in there, your right hand in there, so it's tight, you're gripping it, and then twist it around. And then this is your working yarn, this is the tail. So keep that tail tight. So what we've done is take the tail in our right hand, grab it with our left fingers, hold it tight, twist, and now with these two fingers of your right hand, you're going to grab that working yarn and pull it through. And that's a slip knot. We call it a slip knot because it easily slips out. So if I grab the tail, I can easily slip it out and it comes undone. So let me show you that one more time. Yarn end, the yarn tail, wrap it around my fingers and grab it with my left hand, hold it tight where there's tension. Twist it around. With my two fingers, I'm just gonna pinch that working yarn. Working yarn means it's coming from the yarn ball, not the yarn tail, but the yarn ball. That's the working yarn. Grab it, pull it through. Now what do we do with that slip knot? Well, that's what goes on our hook. So slip that onto your hook. Your yarn tail might be really long. If you don't prefer that, you can always slip it out and try again. So let me show you that one more time. To make a slip knot, I wrap the yarn tail around my right hand, grab the tail with my left fingers, hold it tight, twist, pinch, pull through. And there's our slip knot. Let's put that on our hook. And that is the start. Let's move ahead to chaining. When chaining, you've got your slip knot on your hook. And now we're going to look at yarning over. So this is our working yarn. We're holding our hook correctly. And the tension on your slip knot should be pretty snug on your hook because you don't want that to slip off the hook. Okay? And your hook should always be in this position, never this position, so that you're able to grab the yarn. So when we say yarn over, we mean wrapping the yarn over the end of the hook. So yarn over, and then this hook loop on the hook is what we're going to pull through. So we're going to yarn over and pull through that loop on the hook. Now notice with my thumb and my index finger, I was holding that tail. You do need a little bit of tension in order to pull it through, but you don't want your chains to be super tight. So when we talk about tension, we're talking about how tight you're gripping the hook or how tight you are making your stitches. And we want your initial chain for any project to be fairly loose. Okay, so we don't want this to be so loose that it's falling off the hook, but we don't want it to be so tight that you cannot get your hook through the loop when pulling the yarn through. So let's try that again. In making a chain, we yarn over And at first it's a little awkward because there's not a lot to grab onto. So you're going to pinch down here and you're going to pull it through. Let's try that again. Yarn over, pinch to secure that chain that we're creating, and pull it through. Yarn over, pinch it to hold, pull it through. Let's do a few more. Yarn over, pinch to hold, pull it through. Oh, it came off my hook, but no big deal. We just slip it right back on the hook. And as you can see, this is creating what looks like a chain with links. Let's do a few more. Yarn over, pinch to hold, pull through. So this is creating a chain. And what we mean by chain is that each of these chains or stitches are forming a chain. I guess that makes sense. Now, you'll often hear these referred to as V's. So you see how it looks like a V, one on top of another. These V's are kind of stacked, one on top of another. We will talk about that in subsequent lessons. And the back should look something like this, with these little bumps going along on the back. Now, depending on the size of yarn that you're using, the width or thickness of the yarn that you're using, your chain will be either thinner or thicker. Depending on how tight you're holding your yarn and your hook will determine how close together your chains are. We call that tension. So here to start for this first lesson, what I want you to do is practice picking up your hook, holding it correctly, and picking up your yarn and holding it in your left hand, making a slip knot, and chaining. Those are the things that you need to practice in order to be successful in the next lesson. Let's talk about frogging. Frogging is a term where crocheters pull out their work, pull out their loops or stitches in order to try again. And it's called frogging because I've heard that when you pull it out, which I'm going to demonstrate in a minute, it kind of sounds like a frog ribbit, I guess. Ribbit, ribbit. So you may not hear this, but pulling out your crochet stitches is quite easy. As you can see, I just did that pretty fast. So if you want to make a long, long chain and keep practicing, you're just going to be making a very long chain. And if you don't want to use up your whole ball of yarn, obviously, then you can frog or pull it out and start again. So I want you to practice making a slip knot, holding your hook correctly, and then yarning over, pinching to hold, and pulling through. Yarn over, pull through. Yarn over, pull through to make a chain. I also would recommend through this series keeping some kind of notes. And so I like using Post-it notes or a little card or a little notepad. Here I just have some index cards. And I would recommend writing down abbreviations that you will see in crochet patterns. So this is just kind of like learning the vocabulary of crochet. So today we've talked about chain, just CH, chain space, we'll talk about that more next lesson, the loop on your hook, and yarning over. So these are abbreviations you would see. So if you want to take a minute, write those down somewhere. that would be really helpful. And by the end of our series, we will have filled up this note card with all kinds of helpful information. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Keep practicing and see you next time.